to them. So we're going to switch gears now and start asking some questions from the chat. And the first question we have for you all is from Jason Foster, and he's asking, how do you balance the value of Black culture and aesthetic with the need for affordability in new design? Is this a factor in creating improved spaces?
I can say I think out of right now, there's probably 4 projects that I'm working on that are all that are centered in, this Black aesthetic. And honestly, it just depends. Like, I feel like I am better suited than most people to do a lot with a little. And so I can make it work. I don't know. So I don't think that it's that hard of a balance. Of course, there are things that I want to explore and that I feel like is worth exploring. And I will always say Black people deserve this, And I think even right now, some of the projects that are about to come up, affordability is mandatory because I'm funding it. Some of these I'm funding. And, I want to care as much about the affordability for myself as I do for a potential client or the community or anything like that. So, yeah, I mean, I think everything that I have done so far is merging affordability and having that somehow be, a main factor, and hopefully in Black aesthetics to say that it doesn't have to be a wildly expensive project to be Black. We can be Black with an old pair of jeans or, with the leftovers, we can turn that into soul food. I think that echoes in architecture as well. So is it a factor in creating improved spaces? No, I won't think that affordability will be a factor in, I mean, I don't know. I can't say that right now. I think everything architecture doesn't happen without the money. So you got to ultimately have funding for things. But I think, if I was going to fund for a building that was non-Black aesthetic and fund for a building that's Black aesthetic, the non-Black aesthetic isn't going to be cheaper. So, you make it work.
Yo, I agree with you, Demar, and I see things the same way you do. However, everyone else always tells me it will cost more. And I think it's just the way the built environment, at least within my context, is built. It's like when I start wanting to do anything, that would tap in more into our history and our culture, etc., it's seen as experimental rather than your standard things that are off the shelf. And as a result, there's a cost that comes with that. And, whether it's be a developer or everyone's always just trying to hammer me down as a result of that. So it's very difficult. And they say, obviously there's a cost. But I think, if we all really cared about making the Black aesthetic mainstream or, part of what's possible, then I think we can all make it work. But right now it's very marginalized and it's harder to sort of play around with certain materials and certain, spaces. Like, for example, a big part of what I would call historic Black aesthetic in South Africa are, curves and your round buildings and some of the really cool thatching, like grass thatch and this and that, you know what I mean? And even though you don't want to do it as it was done back in the day, you want to draw from those elements. As soon as you start mentioning any of these things, people start freaking out. And I think that goes back to the question I said earlier. Like, I want to live in a world where the architecture mirrors a life that I haven't lived, where my culture is valued enough that we can invest in actually expressing it in our building.
Yeah, but I will make this one comment. Black people have very expensive taste. so to try correlate affordability and Black people, I don't know, but we have very expensive taste. That's my only comment.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, right.
And I agree with Mandela. I think there's definitely. I think when I think of things that will be more expensive, just like in real life, I'm gonna be like, the homie can do it for cheaper, and and then I'm gonna go and that's really how I think of it. So I literally like I got a big, what's like a steel facade that's going on the house in Watts. And when they gave me a quote for it, I went straight to Slauson and went and found a manufacturer who said, yeah, you could use this space, we'll build it together. And that's kind of how I see. I don't know, it's gonna be different. It's not the standard path, but you gotta get it done.
It's that community, bro. It's that community.
I think that's so dope because Black people are so creative, right? And a lot of that we've had to become creative. But our culture has built the successes of everyone else, right? What we have come up with in our creativity, from fashion to hairstyles to anything else, has inspired everything else that is now high fashion. But for us, it's ghetto, it's less than, right? So I feel like architecture is the same way. Like as we are doing it, it's not respected. But once others adapt it, then it's the newest thing on the market. They're going to gentrify it and appropriate it and do all these things. But Shayna has a question for you all. Along the topic of adaptive reuse and restorative architecture, what do you think have been some successful ways / examples to infuse cultural identity into existing architecture rather than building new to change the existing architecture's identity?
I don't have one. For cultural, I don't have a cultural example, but I do know of projects where even, I guess the first thought is like something like MBRDB's Didden House, where it's kind of this flat blue that is just on top of, I think it's a 2-bedroom house or something that's on top of these old traditional brick buildings. And it's just this very stark comparison when you look at the two buildings kind of juxtaposed against each other. But I think that's what I'm into, that idea of I don't have to kind of blend in with what you gave me before. I am interested in like building on top of projects, on top of housing projects. You gave us this, we doing this, and in terms of like how Nantakozo was speaking of what her community does to extend and make, it's kind of like this open building that they decide, what happens. So I think they have some projects like that in LA too, kind of around the near East LA, but I can't think of the project exactly. So no, not in terms of culture that I know of people kind of adding to existing architecture, but that concept is what I'm interested in.
Yeah, I think it's exactly what Demar was saying. It's, for me, it would be exactly what I mentioned of us sort of adapting what we had to begin with, which was a 4-room house, a 40 square meter 4-room house. But luckily enough, we had very large plots. So as the generations come, they add on, they build a section of the house, or they add on. And sometimes some of these houses have been adapted into really, once the family graduates to a point where they feel they no longer want to live in the township, they actually renovate those buildings and turn them into B&Bs or Airbnb rentals or small boutique hotels in the township. So with things like that, where you'd see like a little 2-bedroom house that used to house a family of 6 in a little kitchen, 1 bedroom and a bathroom, is now this very big, luxurious mansion that is sort of catered out as a boutique hotel for international visitors, so on and so forth, who want to experience the African culture or the township life. So I think I also don't have like big sort of generative projects or commercial size projects, but I think we do that on a day-to-day basis within our neighborhoods with what we have, with the structures that we live in. There also are projects where office buildings, old office buildings or old warehouses have been readapted into social housing. Although I have a very, I don't know, side opinion about social housing and how it actually affects our community and the Black community and living on top of each other, and is that actually the ideal way in which humans or communities should actually live? That's a story for another day. But I think there are examples of just like a adaptive reuse of buildings that are meant for one thing, and then usually catering for housing or for schooling and that kind of use in our community. Yes.
Sure. My next question is, what are the new design standards that we generate once we reimagine architecture through an Afrofuturistic lens?
That one is it's really hard. I think for me, I'll go back to my first statements that we are not the same. So it's kind of hard to define it as one sort of. Oh, sorry, my lights keep going out because I'm not moving. Please excuse me. I have sensors. So it's really hard to define a particular aesthetic or a particular architecture that would represent us in the future. I don't know if our generation is doing that now, because I think our generation is literally just going with what we have. We are sort of still influenced a lot by Eurocentric designs and what we think is aesthetically pleasing. I don't think we've necessarily found our own aesthetic at this point. So to me, my opinion is that at this moment, it's very vague. I think maybe the next generation of architects are going to be able to come up with something that is unhindered and unbiased, and it doesn't come from a perspective where we still look at our stuff. So let's say like the beads that Wandile is talking about, or the crafts and artwork, like the woven roof and sort of the old traditional architecture as something that is lesser than a steel and glass building. Because I think there's still that sort of cognizance within us mentally to think, oh, if it looks rustic and it's timber and it's sort of stony and it looks traditional, it's not as nice as a slick box glass that's floating on, above the surface kind of thing. So I think once we understand, we value ourselves and what we have, we will be able to naturally integrate it into our architecture and into our building. But I think at this moment, we are all still trying to force or do like stick on architecture, slap it on at the end, just slap on a screen, a pattern, like a pattern or a lattice from Kenya or from this thing, and then we call it architecture, but it actually isn't. Actually, look at it. It's just an add-on that aesthetically represents Africa or aesthetically represents the Black culture or a particular nation.
Yeah, I think I 100% agree. And just to add on, I think one of the important things to maybe think about is that like a generation doesn't define itself. So the generation after that looks back and like, oh man, that's was modernism, and that's was this. So I think the only thing we can define is our intention to design spaces and places that represent us, and continue to do that. And I think that's the key. And then from there, we can all borrow and learn from each other and start seeing what that looks like and what's coming to.
Okay, I have one more question. We deserve to enjoy some luxury in life for our efforts. How does luxuriousness, not condemned as design concept, fold into a Black aesthetic? So the way I'm interpreting is essentially, how does the idea of luxury, Black luxury, fold into a Black aesthetic? I know just based off of social media, what I've been seeing within the past couple of months is people being intentional about displaying Black luxury, because I think we are socialized not to expect it from Black people, essentially. So how can we display, I guess, that level of luxury into a Black aesthetic?
I think the question I'd ask firstly is, what do we deem as luxury, and why would it not be part of the Black aesthetic? Because as I said before, Black people have very expensive taste to begin with. So if I had to answer it socially and politically, we can't be ashamed. We like nice things. We really do. And we are proud to show them off. When a Black person drives a nice car, lives in a nice house, he's more than happy to invite people to see them. So we I don't think we necessarily shy away from luxury as such, but if we are then saying how do we create our own identity within the luxury space? So, for instance, if we had to take a Chanel is considered luxury or an expensive item, how do we then, as Black people, create an element or a product that is as luxurious but is ours and is identified with us? Maybe that is the question, and that's something that we need to work on. We can start creating our own, but I think the fact that we've got the arts and crafts sort of element, and we are so adaptable, there is this sense of adaptive reuse of things. That could be, if we valued it as luxurious, we can make it luxurious because it's all a perspective anyway. It's all what everyone else says about it that makes it high end or luxurious or deemed better than.
Yeah, and I mean, of course, yeah, we definitely like nice things. Even if we got to spend that whole tax check on it. I think that no, I wouldn't condemn it as a design concept. I think it can be celebrated still, luxuriousness and what what a lot of us like. I mean, it depends on, somebody up to the age of 28, 29 are going to like different things than somebody and how they're showing luxury at age 39 to 59 or something like that, and then it changes again. And so, and no, I wouldn't even say that luxury only equates to expensive. Some people, I don't know, I think that luxury is thought of in so many different ways for like I just said. So if you're speaking at my age group, a lot of us are going to say, gold chains, earrings, diamonds, women, purses, bags, both of us, shoes, hair, all these things that can be luxury, and it can even be small self-care, like having your nails done or things like that. I mean, so to celebrate the luxury of, say, our hair, that is something that I'm into. I think that can go into design concepts purely. I think celebrating the luxuriousness of, I don't know, even how we interact sometimes. I think that there are certain ways, I don't know. I think that there are certain ways that we even take us. I think that things are luxurious that other people might not. I think that a dice circle, where you shoot dice, we used to be, on the side of school, just in these random corners of school. And I think it's luxurious. It's almost kind of cocky in a sense, or arrogant to be like, this is my space now. We shoot dice here. And, they're making this school that reflects a prison and all that stuff. And we're choosing what we're doing here. And now this is, it's 10 of us here and we all got money. I don't know. I just think like it's just these different spectrums of luxury. And I think that all of them are to be celebrated. I don't think any of them are to be deemed or condemned as like a design concept at all.
I think I have sorry, Wandile, one more comment regarding does luxury equate to expensive? So actually this afternoon I had a meeting with a landscape designer, and I had designed a courtyard for this house. It's a house in an estate, so it's a very fancy estate. And the client really they like the bling and the flashy everything. So they wanted me to design a courtyard in the back, but then there was going to be the courtyard and then a garden, like the rest of the space was sort of cut off. And they wanted me to fence this thing or screen it off so that there's, a private portion and then a public portion. So I was presenting to the landscape architect, and I told him, so I was giving him the brief, you need to put trees here, put a hedge for privacy. And he said, why are there so many things in the space? And I said, what do you mean? They wanted all these things because they like nice things. They wanted a luxurious space. And he said, luxury does not always equal objects or elements or things. Sometimes it's just the quality of space that you are in that feels luxurious. So if I design for you this garden or this courtyard, I'm going to make it luxurious with just trees and planting, and the way in which I create that space that is going to feel like a little Eden, a little garden of Eden for them. You don't need all of these fancy pergolas and all of these things that I had added to try and make it look pretty. And he said, take all of this stuff out. Let's create space. That is the luxury that they want. They don't know it yet, but that's the luxury that when he wakes up in the morning, he has a cup of coffee and he walks out into his backyard. He looks at his space or his courtyard. That is luxury. He's living a life of luxury. So I think luxury is practice. That's exactly what it is, and how we should be looking.
I gotta go to South Africa. Somebody get me over there.
You gotta come home, man. You gotta come home. Yeah, I think you guys have brilliantly put it. And I was just going to share, I think we need to share luxury as Black people. You know what I mean? Like, who's the person who's designing Beyonce and Jay's mansion, right? You find his art stuff, white film, you know. Who's designing President Obama's presidential library? You know what I mean? I may get in trouble for that one. But, you know, we just need to, we need to do better, man. Like, even if, you know, Beyonce and Jay wants that Greco-Roman look, we still got it. We went to these white schools. So I think we need to share that luxury and share in the luxury and hold each other accountable and sharing within that luxury. Because I think we need to change and end this mentality that everything white is better and everything Black is less than. I feel like that every time I go to a meeting where you know, the only Black person or there's other people, even within Black people, that I don't feel like what's expected of me is to interpret the brief and design. I feel like there's a step before that, which is I have to prove that I can actually do the work. Right? Whilst my white counterparts, they just have to sort of come up with the design, right? And people don't judge based on the design, but I'm judged based on me. And I think that's problematic.
Co-sign. I think we can all co-sign that. Having been working in this field and having to prove ourselves more than our white counterparts. But I think we're really at time. Thank you all for your participation. Is there anything that you want to leave with our audience? Any last thoughts? How they can reach you from today?
I just want to say thank you all for having me. I had a great time having this conversation with all of you. And I kept wanting to mention this, but I forgot that, you know, I've been in, not to brag, but I've been in quite a few clubhouses. And it's never where all the people look like me. So this is actually the first time where I feel like I'm in a panel and speaking with all you cats. And it's, you know, feels like I'm having an in-house conversation. So excited to be here. And folks can follow me at One Day Ubuntu on Instagram, and then more about the anti-racist hot dogs and all the crazy trouble I get into.
Thank you so much for your time, everybody. Really enjoyed this conversation. I think everyone asked some very pertinent questions that got us thinking, that got me thinking as well. I think my parting words will be, we are sort of in process of identifying or figuring out how we can make our mark as young Black architects in this industry. I think we are caught up in a past identity that we don't necessarily really relate to because we grew up in the 21st century with the materials and the aesthetic that we now live in. But in that, there is still our own identity. There's still us and us as young Black people, and we know how we relate to the world. And I think if we stay true to ourselves and stay true to who we are and how we act as a people, we will find that aesthetic, we'll find that Black identity that we can then share on a sort of bigger platform. And we shouldn't try to force it as such, and we shouldn't try to replicate the past. I think that's always just how I see it. Thank you, everyone. I don't have any, social platforms. I only have Instagram, so I'm in Team Hlungu on Instagram. If you would like to DM me, would like to share anything interesting that you see, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Can you drop your handle in the chat, please?
Yes, I can.
Thank you.
And I just want to say thank you, Design in Color. Thank you, everyone, my fellow panelists. It was just an amazing conversation to have with you all. So yeah, I appreciate being a part of it. I hope I get to South Africa now. Y'all gonna have to tell me where I could stay. Find an elder for me.
We got you, right?
All right, sounds good. Everybody have a good day. I got an Instagram, and OffTop Design is my Instagram and my website. So yeah, get in contact with me. I answer emails within a week and a half.
Thank you all so much.